Hi Internet family, let's do another chapter of Winged Pharaoh by Joan Grant, originally published in 1937. It belongs to Ariel Press. This is chapter 12, called The Soul. There was a stone pavilion at the end of my father's garden of herbs. It was open on one side, where the roof was supported by two fluted pillars. A record of all the plants in the garden was carved on its walls, and there were still many blank spaces which would one day be filled. On the south wall were all those plants whose healing value lies in their leaves. On the east wall, those that hold it in their flowers and seeds, and on the west wall, those that hold it in their roots. I went one morning there and found Nea talking to the stone carver who was cutting along the lines that had been drawn on the stone wall by a scribe under my father's direction. The scribe had drawn in black, and my father had corrected his drawing in two places with a red line. Nea had borrowed some tools from the carver and was practicing on a thin piece of broken stone. I told him that I didn't think he was doing very well, and he said I could try and see if I could do any better. I thought I might have done, but I hit my finger and made it bleed, so I gave it back to Nea. It was much more difficult than it looked. Nea was so busy with his carving knife that he wouldn't talk to me, so, without his noticing, I worked his hair into little plaits at the back. He would probably be angry when he found out, but that would be much less dull than not being talked to. Then I heard voices. Nea and I never teased each other except when we were alone, so I said, "Quick, Nea, run your fingers through your hair." It was my father with Zertar. The carver asked my father if he had expressed the thought that he wished to be created. When they finished discussing the carvings, we went with father to the vineyard, where the red grapes were being harvested. The men picking them wore white loincloths, and the women wore coarse linen tunics fashioned on the left shoulder. When the tall rush baskets were filled, the women carried them on their heads to the wine vats, where the grapes were tipped into a circular stone trough. Then they were crushed by a wooden roller, joined to a beam, and pushed round by two white oxen. The vintagers were making wine for the palace, so the rollers were light, and pressed out only the finest of the juice. Then we went down the avenue of pomegranates to the orchard, where we sat in the shade of an old fig tree. I asked father to tell us a story about something, and he said, "I will tell you about yourselves, for to know thyself is of great importance. For only when a man can say, 'I know what I am, what I have, and what I have not,' can he seek wisely for what he needs before his journey can be completed. I have told you about the body you live in, how it is made up of the Khat and the Ka-ibis and the Ka. When you die, this body returns to dust. Now that which wears this body is usually spoken of as the spirit, but really there are two parts of it: the soul, which we need only as long as we must return to earth, and the spirit, which is as enduring as time. Soul and spirit have 5 divisions, or if you like, 5 attributes, just as the body has 5 senses. The first of these attributes is that with which we experience emotions and with which we feel. If I touched you lightly while you were asleep, you would not feel it, because that part of you with which you feel is absent. But if your body is hurt while you are asleep, it calls for the protection of your spirit, and you awake. If the pain continues after you return, you know it has awakened you, but if the touch was so brief and gentle that the nerves of your body no longer recorded it when you have returned, then you would not know what had awakened you. To weep when you are unhappy is your body's way of expressing the emotion that you are experiencing in that part of your soul that is called the Ba. When you are in your body, your emotions are much less keen than when you are free of it. When Nati licks your bare hand, you feel the roughness of his tongue. But if you wore a thick glove, you would feel it much less. When your body is awake, it muffles feeling, just as your glove muffles the feeling of Neti's tongue in your hand. And I said, that must be why fear in a dream is far worse than anything you can ever be frightened of on earth. He nodded and went on. Do you remember that story Pakiwi told you about himself and the two Nubians? How once, when he was with me in the land of gold, he got so angry with two Nubians that although he was only a little man, he'd knocked their heads together until they fell down as though dead. Afterwards, Pakiwi admitted to you very shamefacedly that he had been full of beer. Well, too much beer or wine strips off that glove, so that the emotions are left naked, and anger can then be felt so strongly that it can make a little man act as though he were in the body of a giant. On that same expedition, I was surrounded by the enemy, who outnumbered more than 500, and with me I had but 70 men. And with me there was also a horse priest, and of his power he caused our warriors to know courage unmuffled by their bodies, so that they fought like warrior gods, and fell upon the enemy, many of whom they killed, and the rest dropped their weapons and fled in terror. That is why the soldiers of our southern garrison sing together before battle, for it makes their bodies sit lightly upon them, and they fight with the strength of 10 men to one sword. And Nea asked, if your enemies in the land of gold had sung before battle, could the horse priest still have made your 70 vanquish their 500? He would have used a different magic. He would have held our enemies to their bodies so that they were heavy with earth. Then they would not have had the singleness of purpose that they had before. They would have known fear. They would have wondered why they were fighting and what they were fighting for, and all those things which, though wise in their season, did not win battles. The Ba is written sometimes as a winged human head, which is the older form, and sometimes as a human-faced bird, for the Ka ibis is the highest part of the body, and it is in the head, and the Ba is the first winged part of us that is conscious of leaving earth and of being winged. The Ba is the first part of the soul, and the second part is that attribute you use when thinking of things of form, which are those things you know of through the 5 earth senses. With this attribute you think of a sunset, or of a lion, or of the taste of baked quail, or of the sound of a harp, or of the smooth linen of your bed when you are tired, and of the smell of the bean fields beside the river at noon. With this faculty also you decide what words to speak or write, in what shape to carve or build, and when is the exact moment to speed an arrow to a flying bird. There is nothing fashioned by man that is not first fashioned by his thoughts, just as there is no living thing on earth that has not first been born of the spirit of one of the great artificers. When the carver asked me if he had expressed my thought, he knew that there was a clear image in my mind of what I wished to be created in stone, and he hoped that he had translated it correctly. Before Nea carves a boat, he has a picture in his mind of what he wants it to be when it is finished. He feels it is only hidden in the wood, waiting for his knife to free it. And when my plants are still beneath the ground, in my mind they flower, and sleeping branches put forth their leaves. Just as emotion is keener when we are asleep, so can we think more clearly of things of form when we are away from earth. And that is why, before I make any decision of importance or even agree to the plans of a building, I sleep before I set my seal upon it. This attribute of thought is called the Nam. Nea asked how it was written, and father took a piece of charcoal from a little quiver, which he often wore hanging from his belt, in which he carries the reeds and charcoal of a scribe, and on the wall he drew a human mouth. The words that come forth from our mouth belong to earth, so when we talk of things of the spirit, they are but a poor conveyor of our thoughts. But when we talk of things of form, words can describe them accurately, for they both belong to earth. And so the Nam is written as a mouth, because it is that part of us with which we think of things that can be described in words. So now you know of your soul, which is the Ba and the Nam. The soul outlives the body, but when you need no longer be reborn on earth, having learned all that it can teach you, you will need your soul no longer, for then you will be master of emotion, and you will have outgrown things of form. That was chapter 12, The Soul. Have a great day. Bye.